فإذا the last chapter is chapter 3 electrochemistry. هيدا آخر درس. Okay.
صباح الخير.
أهلا. What is an electrochemistry؟ نحن بحياتنا اليومية بنشوف في بطارية السيارة في عنا البيل الأنتريك اللي بنستعمله بالبيت. مظبوط ولا لا؟ فإذا electrochemistry is a part of in chemistry where there is a relation between electrical energy and chemical change. فإذا electrochemistry is the subdiscipline of chemistry that deals with the study of the relationship between what? Electrical energy and chemical change. كيف electrical energy and chemical change؟ يعني موتور الكهرباء شو عم نحرق نحن؟ مازوت وبنزين، مزبوط ولا لا؟ شو عم يولد لنا؟ شو عم يولد لنا؟ electricity، مزبوط؟
energy.
ها؟ طيب بطارية التليفون عندك هي عبارة عن مواد كيميكال. فإذا change from the chemical reactions which produces what energy. ماشي الحال؟
Yes.
طيب فإذا what is an electrochemistry? Electrochemistry is the subdiscipline of chemistry that deals with the study of the relationship between electrical energy and chemical changes and chemical what? Change. ماشي ماشي يا ابراهيم؟ ماشي الحال؟
ماشي.
طيب مثل شو؟ chemical reactions that involve the input of generation of electric currents are called electrochemical reactions. مظبوط ولا لا؟
Yes.
عندنا اياه. كمان عندي هون production of chemical change by electrical energy. هذه example. Conversion of a chemical energy into electrical energy نفس الشيء. ده generation of spontaneous. خلاص هو مش مشكلة، بس أهم شيء عرفوا لي هو هاي relation. ماشي؟ Electrochemistry has a number of different uses, particularly by an industry. The principle of cells are used to make electrical battery مثل موجودين بالسيارة، بطارية السيارة فيك تمشي بلاها، في كهرباء بلاها. شو؟ في كهرباء بلا البطارية؟
لا.
فإذا a fuel cell convert the chemical potential energy produced by the oxidation of fuel. يعني عم نحرق نحل الفيول. فإذا أنا أهم شيء أعرف هاي الجملة. أوكي؟ فإذا relationship between chemical and هذه كلها introduction المعرفة. اتفقنا ولا لا؟
Yes.
طيب هلا بندي صلب الدرس. شو الأكسيديشن؟ شو معنات ريدكشن؟ هلا سبق واخذنا بالايونيك بوند.
الاكسيديشن بتستعمل انرجي.
لك حبيبي نحن بتتذكروا كنا ناخذ سي يو واف اي.
Yes.
اف اي 2 بلس 2 الكترونز. هيدا شو هيدا؟ loses electrons. صح؟ مظبوط؟
Yes.
وهيدا شو؟ 2 plus 2 electrons gives what? Cu. هيدا شو؟ gains 2 electrons. مظبوط ولا لا؟ كنا نشوف قدها مش زيرو وهاي زيرو؟
بلا.
معي ولا لا؟
بلا.
هلا نحن بدنا نقيم هلا كلمة لوز شو بتعني بالكيمستري وكلمة جين شو بتعمل؟ كلمة لوز بتعني اوكسيديشن. بدل ما نقول لوز شو بنقول؟ اوكسيديشن. بدل ما نقول gain شو بنقول؟ reduction.
synthesis. ماشي.
ماشي الحال؟ فإذا كلمة loses means what؟ oxidation. كلمة gains شو معناتها؟ reduction. ماشي الحال؟ إذا نحن
ماشي.
جمعناهم مع بعض اهو، مش كنا نجمعهم مع بعض؟ ها؟ Cu
بلى
2 plus Fe gives what؟ Cu plus Fe2 plus. هاي شو بنسميها؟ فيها reduction بنسميها redox reaction. ليش redox؟ It contains reduction.
لأنه بقلبها reduction and oxidation.
اتفقنا ولا لا؟ اتفقنا؟
Yes.
طيب هلا عندي فيديو بدي فرجيكم عليه ونشتغل.
اساس بالصيني.
هيا يلا.
We often abbreviate oxidation and reduction, so we just call these redox reactions for short. So, what is oxidation reduction or redox reaction? Here's a
مش عم نشوف الفيديو بس سامعينه.
oxidation reduction reactions. Electrons move between atoms. Check out this diagram.
عندكم مشكلة.
We got
Yeah.
atom A and atom B.
لازم مش مبين الشاشة.
There's an electron moving out of
ولا
atom A into atom B. So
ايه هلا باين.
This video is an introduction to oxidation and reduction reactions. We often abbreviate oxidation and reduction, so we just call these redox reactions for short.
لازم أطلع اللينك معلق كتير.
Oxidation and reduction or redox reaction. Here's a quick definition. In oxidation reduction reactions, electrons move between atoms. Check out this
إذا
diagram.
شو قال؟ During oxidation reaction, electrons move between atoms. لاحظنا هونيك شو قلنا؟ لاحظنا هون مطرح ما أخذنا هون electrons loses by Fe are attracted by Cu. صح ولا لا؟ مظبوط؟ فإذا شو صار
Yes.
عندي أنا هون؟ شو كان عندي أنا هون؟ لاحظ هاي Fe وهاي شو؟ Cu 2 plus 2 electrons. صح ولا لا؟ are transferred from Fe to Cu. اتفقنا؟ بنكفي.
Yes.
We got atom A and atom B.
عندنا atom A
There's
and
an
atom B.
electron moving out of atom A into atom B. So this is definitely an oxidation reduction reaction because there's an electron moving between the atoms. Now we can describe the movement of this electron using the words oxidation and reduction. So let's learn specifically what both of these mean. Reduction is a gain of electrons. I know this seems kind of confusing because usually when you have a reduction of something,
فإذا what's the meaning of reduction?
the gain of electrons.
يعني B هي reduction.
والoxidation
loses.
هيدا نفس الشيء كان ب chapter of ions. بس كلمة gain شو بنحط محلها؟ reduction. كلمة loss شو بنحط محلها؟
oxidation.
oxidation. كفي.
you have less of it. We'll talk later about why a gain of electrons is called a reduction. But anyway, reduction, gain of electrons, and then oxidation, which is a loss of electrons. So we got reduction and oxidation. What's happening to atoms A and B over here? Well, atom A is giving up one of its electrons. It's losing an electron. So at atom A, oxidation is taking place. Atom B is receiving an electron. It's gaining an electron. So at atom B, reduction is taking place.
فإذا since A loses electrons فإذا it will be oxidized. يعني في oxidation. Since B attract electrons and again electrons صار في reduction.
Now we can modify these words slightly to come up with terms we use to describe what's happening to the atoms. atom A is undergoing oxidation, so we can say that atom A is being oxidized. Atom B is undergoing reduction, so we can say that atom B is being.
يعني الاتوم A مش loses electrons، شو بنسميه؟ is oxidized، مظبوط ولا لا؟ it undergoes oxidation يعني it's oxidized. البي شو undergoes reduction، شو صار بنسميه؟ B is reduced، مظبوط ولا لا؟ كله اوكي؟
فهمت كيف
Reduced. So we got oxidation, oxidized, reduction, reduced. The big picture here is that reduction is a gain of electrons and oxidation is a loss.
فإذا ما نحفظ
So I don't know
كلمة
about you, but when I
oxidation
was
شو
first learning
معناتها؟
this stuff, I
reduction شو
found it
معناتها؟
so confusing. Why should a reduction be a gain of electrons? Usually when you're reducing something, you're getting less of it. So here's one thing that might be helpful to think about. That's that electrons have negative charge. So as you add electrons to something, its charge goes down. The more electrons you add, the lower the charge. So as you add electrons, as electrons are gained, the charge reduces.
هاي شو معناتها؟ شو معناتها هاي؟ لاحظوا
يعني عم بقلنا
لاحظوا
بصير ماينس اكثر.
هيدا
يعني بس
oxidation.
تعمل لوز
oxidation charge increases ولا decreases؟
increase.
بس يكون في عندي increase in charge بيكون في عندي oxidation. هيدا charge شو صار فيه؟ شو صار فيه charge هيدا؟ ها؟ هيدا charge شو صار فيه؟ هيدا شو صار فيه؟ decrease صح؟ مظبوط ولا لا؟ مظبوط؟ إذا هون شو عندي أنا صار؟ هون charge decrease، هون charge شو؟ increases
increase.
صح؟ فإذا اللي عم يشرحنا إياها هونيك إياها، هون 0 هون بلس 1 بلس 2 بلس 3 اتسترا اتسترا ماينس 1 ماينس 2 ماينس 3 اتسترا. هلا بدنا نشوف when the charge increases شو صار عندي؟ هيدا charge بنسميه oxidation number. شو بنسميه charge؟
oxidation number.
increases بصير في عندي oxidation. ليه؟ كل ما زاد البوزيتيف مش معناتها عم يخسر الكترون اكثر. مظبوط؟ كمان هون تشارج او اوكسيديشن نمبر او ان معناته اوكسيديشن نمبر decreases شو صار في عندي؟ reduction. ماشي الحال؟ فاذا هون بدي استعمل مصطلحات جديده. instead of loss of electrons شو صار عندنا بستعمل؟ oxidation. instead of gain of electrons شو بستعمل؟
oxidation.
لا gain of electrons شو بستعمل؟ reduction. بدل تشارج شو بستعمل؟
reduction. oxidation number.
قد ايه الاكسيديشن نمبر لهي؟
number
2 بلس. قد ايه
2 plus
0 فيها 0
0.
ماشي الحال. بدل ما كلمة تشارج شو بقول أنا؟ ها تشارج ماشي الحال. مبدئيا هلا ماشي
بس
الحال.
استاذ
نعم
استاذ
ايه يا حبيبي؟
إذا CU gains ليه plus مش minus؟
ما هي سيو 2 بلس شو معناتها؟ شو معناتها؟ مش it's already loses 2 electrons. مش نحن اخذنا بالايون
ما محطوط حتى gains 2 electrons.
ايه ما هي 2 بلس 2 electrons شو اعطانا؟ سي يو 0 صارت جين. البوزيتيف ليكي البوزيتيف ايون شو كيف بيطلع لنا بوزيتيف ايون؟
شو؟
كيف طلع لنا بوزيتيف ايون؟
بس تعمل لوز.
ها؟ لا البوزيتيف ايون
بس تعمل لوز.
كيف نحصل عليه؟ مش كيف ده اتوم
بس تعمل لوز.
شايف؟
بس يكون في لوز
قد ايه لوز 2. طيب خلينا نكفي هلا الفيديو و نشرح.
ما سيو انت كاتب جينز 2.
CO2 بلس عم بقول انا. هلا خلينا نشتغل فيها هيدي.
So that might be helpful to keep in mind to have this make a little bit more sense. Still, these things can be really confusing to remember. So here are a couple really great mnemonics. First is the term oil rig. This is the name of one of those big structures you use to drill for oil. OIL stands for oxidation is loss.
فاذا
And
IOL شو
RIG
معناتها؟
stands
Oxidation
for
is loss.
reduction is gain.
RIG reduction
Here's
is
another
gain.
one you might like. You like animals.
صح؟
Leo the lion says grr. All right. LEO stands for loss of electrons is oxidation, and grr stands for gain of electrons
شايفين هيدي شو
is
حلوة؟
reduction. So learn
شو معناتها هاي؟ reduction شو معناتها؟ gain of electron. oxidation شو loss of electron. فاذا O oxidation I شو معناتها؟ شو معناتها؟
is
R شو معناتها؟ reduction gain.
reduction.
نجي هون
reduction.
نجي تحت LEO هيها
one.
شو معناتها؟ loss of electrons.
loss of electron.
oxidation
What reduction
loss
is,
of electrons
what
oxidation
oxidation.
gain
Okay.
of electron reduction.
Oxidation and reduction happen in all sorts of chemical reactions. They're like the super important thing that makes
فاذا هيدا A electrons move one or many electrons move from A to B شو بنسميها؟ A is oxidized B is reduced. فاذا reduction gain of electrons oxidation loss of electrons.
those reactions happen that makes them go. So to learn more about this stuff, we're going to have to look at an example of a chemical reaction where oxidation and reduction are taking place. Here's a chemical reaction that we're going to be talking about.
فاذا chemical reaction are produced simultaneously in the same time. In the same time. The reaction between Na and Cl is called redox reaction. هلا بنشوف ليه.
Sodium and chlorine coming together to make sodium chloride, table salt. Now, sodium chloride is an ionic compound, which means it's made of ions. Specifically, the sodium 1 plus and the chloride 1
تتذكروا
minus.
لما كنا ناخذ هونيك اخذنا الايونيك بوند between NaCl؟ تتذكروها؟ ولا لا؟ ليك مش كان عندي بالNaCl انا عندي Na11 مش كنا ناخذ Na11 هاد لكم اياها Cl17 K2 L8 M1 هيدا كولوم 1 هيدا ميتال هيدي K2 L8 L8 شو هون M7 كولوم 17 شو هاي نون ميتال صح هيدا ionizes by losing one electron هيدا شو ionizes by gaining one electron مش كنا ناخذ هيك Na gives Na plus one electron هكا ناخذ يا لا ولا شو نجاة هكا ناخذ ولا لا كنا ناخذ هيك ولا لا هي فاذا هي Na وهي Cl electron is changed from Na to Cl فاذا
Yeah.
هي شو صار فينا نقول نحن هلا؟ لاحظوا هون في يقول اوكسيديشن، هون شو بقول؟ ريدكشن. فاذا
Reduction.
Na plus Cl gives what? Na شو؟ Na Cl هاي بنسميها ريدوكس. ليش بنسميها ريدوكس؟ It's formed of oxidation and reduction. ماشي الحال؟
هلا سامع شيء؟
يلا معلش شيء. هلا
No.
بس دكتور بدي
هلا
اكتبها.
بنكفي
استاذ فيك ترجعها؟
عمال. يلا.
These two ions stick together because they have opposite charges, and opposite charges attract. Now, Na and Cl, they didn't always have charges though. Over here, before they combined, they have no charge. They are two electrically neutral atoms.
Na and Cl are electrically neutral. Na has no charge, Cl has no charge. ماشي الحال؟ Na صارت Na plus, it loses one electron. Its oxidation number increases. It increases from 0 to +1. It undergoes oxidation.
Come together and make sodium chloride. These two atoms have to end up getting charges, and then they stick together. So let's talk about how this happens, how they end up getting charges. So we start out with Na and Cl here as electrically neutral atoms with no charge, and they're on their own.
شو معنات electrically neutral atom؟ يعني Na and Cl have no charge.
Charge. Atoms.
They're separate. The next thing that happens is sodium gives one of its electrons to chlorine. So this is where the charges come in. Sodium loses one of its electrons, so it becomes Na plus 1. And chlorine gains an electron, so it becomes Cl minus 1. Now we have two ions with opposite charges. What do oppositely charged things do? They stick together. So these two ions come together and they stick, making sodium chloride. Okay? So this is the process where we start from electrically neutral atoms. We have an electron transfer. We get ions that then stick together. So here's the equation that I showed you earlier that describes this process. There are a couple things that I could add to this, though, to make stuff a little clearer. Check out these numbers that I've written in here in the red. These are called oxidation numbers, and they give me a sense of what's
فإذا قد كانت هيدي تشارج 0 plus 1 minus 1 شو بنسميهم؟ قولوا لي شو بنسميهم؟
Oxidation number.
Oxidation number.
نستعمل oxidation number. كان نستعمل تشارج بدرس الايون والايونيك بوند. هون شو نستعمل؟ oxidation numbers. ايه.
and with the charges. So above Na and Cl, I've written zeros. That indicates that these two atoms start out being electrically neutral. They have no charge. That's what the zero means. Then on this side of the equation, once the sodium and chloride have taken on charges, I put those charges above each element. +1 for the sodium and -1 for the chloride. These oxidation numbers help us keep track of how charges change during a reaction. Most importantly for this reaction, they remind us that sodium and chlorine start out neutral and only end up getting a charge later after this electron transfer takes place. So that is oxidation numbers, and we'll talk more about those in coming lessons. So obviously this is an oxidation reduction reaction because there is a transfer of an electron between these two atoms. I now want to describe what's happening to sodium and chlorine using these terms reduction and oxidation. So just to refresh your memory, reduction here is a gain of electrons and oxidation is a loss of electrons. So for sodium, what's happening? Is it being reduced or is it being oxidized? Well, sodium is giving up one of its electrons, it's losing an electron, so it's being oxidized. Here's a diagram of sodium giving.
Na loses electron, it undergoes oxidation, sodium is oxidized.
Up that electron. Now chlorine, on the other hand, is receiving an electron. It's gaining an electron, so chlorine is being reduced. So there's oxidation and reduction going on here. We can sort of show this oxidation and reduction with this picture that I drew, or we can describe it in words. The next thing that I want to do is I want to show you how we can write chemical equations that show oxidation and reduction. So let's start out here with chlorine. I want to write a chemical equation that shows the reduction of chlorine. So I'm going to start out with Cl here. This is neutral chlorine. It doesn't have any charge. It's this thing here. And then it receives an electron. So to write an equation for that, I'm going to write plus E minus. E minus is a symbol we use for electrons. So Cl, neutral chlorine, plus 1 electron gives me this guy right here, Cl1 minus. So this
أخذناها من ساعة هاي. Cl receives 1 electron, gains 1 electron to form Cl minus. أخذناها ولا لا؟
equation for the reduction of chlorine.
بلا أخذناه.
Electron. Okay. Now for sodium things are a little bit trickier for the oxidation. Let me show you why. So what I really want to write is Na minus 1 electron.
هو حط ماينس أو نحطها بعد السهم.
Na 1 plus. But unfortunately, I can't write this because in chemical equations, we can't use minus signs. We can only use plus signs. So I can't write the oxidation like this. Instead, I'm going to write it like this. I'm going to start out with Na here. And then I'm going to put my arrow. So Na turns into Na1 plus 1 electron. Writing the electron on this side of the equation indicates that it's being spit out, that Na is losing it. It's no longer part of the atom. So to write reduction, we put the electron on this side of the equation because it's coming together with the atom. To write oxidation, we put the electron on this side of the equation because it's getting spit out. So these are the reactions for oxidation and reduction of sodium and chlorine. Now I want to talk a little bit more about these two reactions and how we can combine them to make a larger, bigger picture equation. Here's our big picture reaction for sodium and chlorine coming together to make sodium chloride. Now, this reaction here really has two processes going on within it. One of these processes is the oxidation of sodium. It starts out at 0, loses an electron,
from 0 to plus 1 oxidation.
And here is the equation for just the oxidation.
عملناها.
The other process that's going on in this reaction here is the reduction of chlorine. Chlorine starts neutral at 0, it gains an electron, and it ends up as Cl1 minus. And here is the equation for the reduction of chlorine. Now, these two equations down here are called half reactions. They show either oxidation or reduction, and they're called half reactions because they each kind of tell half the story. You put them together, and you get the big picture reaction.